Happy Friday, everybody. We are the last word, and Kevin is here. Safety first. Hey, KP.
How are you?
Doing well. Robbie's here on his bat phone. We're going to kick Robbie to the curb as soon as Christy gets in here, but it's Friday. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. KP, are you at the Hurt No More, or are you advancing into the industry conference? He can't hear. Gotta love these live shows, everybody.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We got you, bud.
We can hear you now. What I mean,
Where are you
I'm gonna switch my my AirPods.
Where are you reporting in from, KP?
I can't hear you.
it looks like he's in he's about to base jump the Grand Canyon or something.
Bungee.
I thought the Hurt Me More trip was in like mid-March. He's getting a head start.
No. It's right. I think this might be the tail end of it, and then
no way. I was in Texas this week with Nolan Turner, who like was a big part of that, and he was talking about what's coming up. So I don't think it was this week because TMBA was this week.
KP, can you hear us? Jeez, oh man. Hey, Robbie, good thing. Today's show is not sponsored. They want a refund.
Yeah, we're gonna talk offline about that. How are you doing, man? How are you doing? Happy Friday.
I'm good. I just did a little cameo crossover appearance on Jeremy Potter and Brock Cassidy and Rick Rock's show. KP, can you hear us? And they were talking about, obviously a lot's going on in from a regulatory front, right? We've got the revolving leadership chair at the CFPB and everything else, and so they asked my perspective, kind of how we're dealing with it at FinLocker. And this is one of those times where, like, I spend 99% of my time talking with loan officers. So I feel like I'm really close to the street, not so close, like I used to be to kind of the regulatory stuff. And it's kind of nice to be out of the swirl, honestly, right now. Because, for loan officers, their focus right now is on the consumer, right? And taking care of the consumer in every way possible. And that starts with, at the top of the funnel, attracting those consumers, but being a resource for them. And so I feel fortunate that I've not been in the middle of the swirl of all this, all the chaos, if you will, that's happening. It's been a busy, 4 weeks with the new administration, and there's a lot of stuff getting done, and there's a lot more that's going to get done. And so those guys in the other show were kind of talking about that.
When you talk to these LOs, is the mood actually, I don't even know if I want to use optimistic or pessimistic. I'll ask you to corroborate. It's kind of like people are like, wake up and go grind, gotta work hard, let's hit the road.
I would say, I'm going to add Christy in here. We'll go for, I gotta switch my boxes here. Let's see. There we go. Ignore the background. Bear with me for a minute. Hold on. So Robbie, while I'm figuring out the background, what I would say, instead of pessimistic or optimistic, I would say realistic. And realistic meaning, look at they've been at this and in this type of market for quite a while, and so the loan officers that I typically am talking to, I think, are more bullish on themselves, right, than anything. And so their reality right now is by and large to be the best resource for their communities, for their consumers. And they're the ones that we're talking to aren't the woe is me. They're not, blaming the market, blaming rates, and looking for a bailout in lower rates. They're just blocking and tackling and doing the things that you have to do in this business to take care of consumers.
I mentioned that this week. I spoke at the Texas Mortgage Bankers event, and Christy was in the audience. That we're at a nice place for people coming into the industry because it's not this boom and bust. We're in a very normal rate environment. It's kind of like, hey, this is how it normally is. This is how it should be. And I do want to bring in Christy here. Christy, what were your big takeaways from TMBA? What was the chatter we can kind of share with our audience here?
I was going to say, I want to give a shout out to you and the group that wrapped up the event. So by the way, you go to conferences and sometimes the content is or it's the same thing you've always heard. I thought the group at TMBA did a really good job with the panels and the people that they had and the topics that they presented. Would have wished we'd had some more attendance, but Robbie and Clay and Nolan and Adam and who am I leaving out? Mike McCauley. I knew I was leaving out somebody I liked. Mike McCauley, you guys did.
Wait a minute. Let's back that one up a little bit. Does that imply that the first 4 names you don't like?
Yes. No. I like them all. I was like, I know I'm leaving out somebody. In fairness, I have slept since then. But they did a wrap-up session that was closed to the media, really off the record, and they called it Beers with the Experts. And so in true mortgage banker fashion, there was a bar at the back, and everybody got their cocktail. They did a little fundraising for the Texas PAC, and then turned it over to this group of gentlemen to really have a candid conversation about what was going on in the industry and just really riff off of each other. And it was a great way to close the session with taking what people had pulled from each of the sessions and really using their expertise to talk about the markets and the industry. I think that the take is people have some concerns about where we are. People have some concerns about delinquencies and what that's going to imply for not only people's ability to purchase, but people's ability to refinance should we see interest rates drop. Will they be able to take advantage of them? And maybe only if they are in certain types of loans where they can do a streamline refinance. Does that mean Fannie and Freddie have to step up with something similar to that? Right? There was a lot of chatter around that. And what does this mean for the future of our industry?
Very interesting. So I think I know the answer to this, but that audience tends to be less at the street level, loan officer level, and more, in the corporate offices, cap markets, production management, operations, right? Credit. Because I think it makes sense those would be the areas of focus and concern versus, again, who I tend to face off with is, more of the folks that are on the street with the consumers.
Well, the folks on the street with the consumers will be worried about this as soon as they start pulling credit and looking at DTI, right?
Yes.
So these guys are forecasting and modeling like what's going to happen. Is this business really going to be there? A lot of conversation with what happens with Jenny Mae and how do changes at Jenny impact the market. It was a little warmer in Houston than it is where KP is. You did not have to have on your skull cap to be there in Houston.
Wait, but now this is very odd because KP previously we could hear him and he couldn't hear us, but now he can hear us. Can we hear him? KP, go on.
Yeah, I had to relaunch.
Get me out of here.
I don't know why my headphones weren't working, the speakerphone wasn't working. I had to hold it up to my ear. Anyway, we're all good. I've been working on personal development this year, and Robbie's given me some tips, and so this is my personal best. We're 10 minutes in, and I'm finally talking. So.
Thank you. Yes, good for you. Let other people speak for once. I like that.
Yeah, you guys have a lot to say.
Robbie asked me to put the incorrect link in the meeting invite and then give it to you 10 minutes after we started. So
see, he's a good mentor.
Brian, kick me out of here. I want to hear you three talk, not me.
Oh, Robbie, come on, love you, buddy.
Oh, Robbie, no, stay.
Not my show. Not my show.
all right, buddy.
It is actually. Your show.
Yeah, it is. We're gonna drop you out now.
Literally.
KP, how's Park City, buddy?
I've been here since Tuesday.
Yeah.
The Mortgage Collaborative had their board retreat, so I had a couple dinners with them. I've hardly even done anything. Thank you. I've hardly even done anything here because, I've had calls and it's 11 a.m. here, and they got 2 feet of snow overnight and into the morning.
This is good news when you're skiing, right? I mean, I'm not a skier, but it sounds like sounds like fresh powder to me.
What am I doing right now? I'm not skiing.
Right.
So the second this show is over, I'm going to cut my LinkedIn video and we're going to roll. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I was kind of like reading to the tea leaves, Chrisman blog, Monday morning and Saturday, they were all over our new CFPB director. So now McKernan is actually appointed. So we're no longer Vought acting. We are no longer Besant acting. We are a new appointee. And what did they do? They got rid of 100 people immediately.
Yeah.
And so there's this interesting rule that I read about that for every one new regulation rolled out by this administration, they want to get rid of 10. For every one employee hired, they want to get rid of 4 people. That sucks if you're one of those 4 people. I know there's a lot of people at the beginning are just leaving just for philosophical differences. And so, here we are 4 weeks in, Monday starts week 5. And there's been a lot. And there's been a lot that's impacted our industry. I would argue more has impacted our industry in 4 weeks than the last 4 years. And some of these people are losing their minds out there in the press. But I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not too cautious, but I'm optimistic that we're going to come out a stronger industry. I mean, I just read Fannie Mae's. They just made another $7 billion in the year, $4 billion in the quarter, $4 billion in 3 months, and they got like $92 billion in capital. And so, are the GSEs going to be released out of conservatorship into private? I mean, I'm not a fan unless, of course, there's an explicit guarantee. We saw what all the private companies did. They didn't have enough money to support our industry in 2020 when COVID hit, forbearance, and had to pay, tax and insurance on behalf of borrowers that don't have to make, principal and interest payments. So there's just not enough money other than the U.S. government to stand up our industry, period, in a story, full stop. So as it relates to this being a priority of GSE privatization, they're going to try and pass a budget starting March 14th. Maybe it's a continuing resolution into August. Maybe it's an actual budget. Then they're going to try and pass tax cuts. Probably won't be able to do both at once. And then there are a couple other priorities that this administration wants to get to before even privatizing the GSEs. And they have stated, the Treasury Secretary stated, we don't want to do anything that's going to make mortgage rates go higher. So I'm encouraged by that. So we'll see. Those are my top thoughts.
I'm encouraged by the fact that you're working instead of skiing today. I think that's all good.
I make this show a priority. So I was scrambling to get parked and boots on and get across the lift to get to the Silver Lake Lodge. I'm tucked in this little corner. I even had them turn the music down the speaker back here. I mean, and I got a beer.
I say, and you got a beer. That's impressive. I really appreciate that. And this is always the highlight of my Friday, to get to hang out with you guys and just chat about what's going on in the industry. I'm with you. I am cautiously optimistic that we're going to see improvements, though. You opened up the headline this morning from the Housing Wire morning email that said, 50% of HUD workers are cut.
Yeah.
Right? That's a headline.
That's clickbait. That's, far left extreme clickbait. And I'm not clicking on those links anymore.
Are you talking about Housing Wire being far left clickbait?
Come on. So I love Clayton. I love Sarah. I love Logan, but I love the Chrisman blog. And I like just the facts, ma'am. I want just the facts. I don't want clickbait. I don't want conjecture. I don't want my emotions to be toyed with. And again, that's part of my personal development. I am not clicking on media that's going to make me feel some type of way when they don't know what they're talking about. So I want to watch the facts. I want to see what's happening. 10-year treasuries at 445 this morning. I know, Christy, you usually have like a nice live update of the 10-year treasury. I just looked about 20 minutes ago.
I haven't looked in a hot minute. Hold on.
We had a hot CPI, hot CPI, and we went to the upper bounds of the 10-year range, and it was 460. And now we're back down to 445 after hot inflation, CPI and PPI with upward revisions.
447 right this second.
Yeah, it's a great rate. Rates are better than they were, last month when the fears were out there. So I'm a huge fan of, working on the 10-year treasury, like the Treasury Secretary said, trying to have lower interest rates. That's literally what everyone wants universally. Like, I don't know why we're not all behind that universally. So again, cautiously optimistic.
I think we should all be behind that. I'm with you. I'm standing right behind you in this desire to have lower rates. We've got to work on affordability, and there's so many things that go into affordability. We've talked about this offline a number of times when we've seen each other at conferences. There's so much that goes into it, from what's happening with the insurance, what's happening with property taxes. And what was interesting is here in Texas, there's a bill that has passed the Senate that would actually reduce property taxes. And the concern is that all of that doesn't make it to the consumer, that it gets gobbled up by the different counties or cities that then say, oh, well, they're going to have to pay less, so we can increase our millage rate and make it cost more. We can get more money. And now the legislature here in Texas is trying to stop that and force those savings to be passed on to individuals like me and you and the folks, that come in and use the credit union every day, our friends and neighbors. And I think those are some things that we have to look at from a government perspective, is we can have some lofty goals and things that they do, and then the impact never makes its way downstream. So how do we continue to think about the changes that are being made this is not a political statement, but the changes that are being made at the administration, at this administration's level? How do we make sure that those changes actively impact people on the street and do what they're hoping to do and aren't just gobbled up in some other place before they can actually impact consumers' wallets and impact home affordability?
I mean, lower rates is it. It is the single biggest driver of home affordability. I know they're working on permitting and getting more red tape cleared out, but focusing on the 10-year treasury and focusing on the quarterly treasury refunding announcement being favorable to bond traders, like, that is it, right? That's the main driver. And I got to spend time with Michael Jones, part of your UFCU team here. He's part of the board at TMC. You guys have some great stuff going on over there. And, I always get to tell the story how I opened my account my freshman year in '94 with you guys. And so I love where this industry is going. I love the collaboration. But yeah, affordability is really driven by rates. Insurance, maybe California and Florida can do something to help out there with the insurance catastrophe modeling. I'm on the California MBA board. We'll be up there in Sacramento in March, pushing on them yet again to allow the big insurers, State Farm and Farmers, to come back into California and rebalance their book. And State Farm, it announced last couple weeks an emergency 22% rate hike on all renewals in the state of California for their existing policies, because they're getting overwhelmed with the claims from the LA fires, which, thank God, they're flooding.
Yeah.
So now they're getting so much rain over there, they're flooding. So yeah, lots going on the affordability front, but rates are the driver.
So I heard two things about California insurance. One, a number of insurance companies are, because they know people don't have the capacity or the ability at this point, for a variety of reasons, to be able to list out all of their content, they're just automatically sending checks out to folks for like 80% of their content value and saying, look, here you go. You don't have to submit anything. If you're happy with this, we're not going to ask you for any documentation. If you want up to 100% of your content, then you're going to have documentation.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's cutting through red tape. That's amazing.
So I heard that from a couple of people who were actually impacted and received checks. And I thought, well, this is really cool. And again, you still have the opportunity to do the lists and all the paperwork and get the difference, but they're just sending that out to get money into people's pockets, which I love to hear. I also read an article, KP, that talked about, how do we get more insurers back into California and Florida, and how do we protect the rest of the industry so that they don't have this happen? And talking about creating a federal stopgap, that private insurance companies will take a risk so far, and then their reinsurance or some kind of federal stopgap would be that, hey, if there's a disaster like this or major hurricane, that it would then go to the federal government, more to a taxpayer model, to help reduce premiums.
But in effect, doesn't that mean people in Michigan that don't have hurricanes, don't have wildfires, subsidize the insurance for those other areas?
Well, you're going to subsidize it anyway.
Thank you. Thank you for making timely mortgage payments, Brian. I appreciate you. You're a good man.
Yeah,
and pay your taxes. It's coming up here pretty soon, about 2 months. I think ultimately when there's a disaster that overwhelms the insurance industry, that the government does step in anyway, right? You look at FEMA, You look at, money being clawed back, just being wastefully spent in different areas. I mean, the headlines are incredible. I mean, say what you want about Doge, and gosh, when you say the word Elon Musk, it's like being triggered emotionally for people like saying the word Donald Trump. But they are uncovering so much waste. Yeah, I know. And they're uncovering so much waste and fraud and abuse. And these poor people in North Carolina are still sitting out there, just trying to live their life. And, people are being housed in New York for $20 million in luxury hotels. Like, what's going on? So the reinsurance piece is kind of like the capital market, secondary market, if you will, of securitizing insurance, homeowners insurance policies. And so if there is a model structurally that's set up that, yes, taxpayers pay, what ultimately happens is everybody's insurance doesn't go up faster and more, and you get coverage and you have the safety net. And so it will cost. So if we end this war in Ukraine, we end this war in the Middle East, we're going to save billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to maybe, throw 20 or 30 billion behind reinsurance. And so it's just like, Brian, your taxes are paying for drones and grenades and anti-air strike missile defense. I'd rather than be paying for American citizens to have, insurance or reinsurance and having that industry backstop. So, Christy, that's great insight on the insurance side.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited because, Brian, by the way, your homeowner's policy would go up even if you weren't paying it in taxes, right? I mean, the insurance companies have to have a profitability model. Every business has to stay in business, and the only way they do that is to actually have profits. And so I think this is a time period in not only just our industry, but in the way that we're looking at things. Because I know you said two names that really strike fear in some people and get other people really excited. You're trying to increase our viewership here, KP, by getting into the clickbait on our side.
We just went down by eight viewers in the last 2 months.
I mean, they're in charge,
He isn't sharing his
we lost another one.
But think of this: every administration since Obama has actually had this same process. It just wasn't as public, and it maybe didn't go as deep or as fast. So this process occurs, and it's a necessary process. We should be looking at our spending. We should be KP, Brian, I know in your roles in your organizations, you're doing this all the time. You're looking at every contract when it renews and saying, should we still be doing this? Should we still have this? Should we renegotiate? And we should, as taxpayers, be expecting the federal government to do the same thing. So, Obama did it, and I'm glad the current administration is doing it.
Christy, you and I were together during a stretch. We worked together, I should say. And remember, there was a department that was stood up in the company, and we were charged with, go find 15% in year-over-year savings. And everyone would go to work and find the 15%, and we'd turn in our report. And then next week we'd get called into a meeting, and, everyone would get applauded. And then, okay, now let's go get another 10%. Right. So to your point, I mean, this is, business, good business practice, to evaluate your business, your ins and outs, right? The cash flow. And clearly, as a business, our country was overdue and has been overdue for this.
If you've ever stated in your life, anytime, like, we need to balance our budget as a country, or we need to tackle the debt or deficit, or why doesn't the Fed or the U.S. government have to look at their balance sheet like we do at our families at home? If you've ever said that, you're finally seeing the most visibility ever of that actually being done. And so you should, be like, okay, they're finally doing it. Now, if they're cutting something you don't like, that's where the philosophical difference gets into.
Right.
I haven't, 4 weeks in, almost 5 weeks in, I haven't seen anything that was just clearly like, that is crazy. We were spending money on what? We were paying $8 million a year to fund Politico. Let's throw $1 million to the Chrisman blog. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, the Chrisman blog, the Chrisman commentary has facts, data, math, and science, and they're great. Rob and Robbie are great. but they don't get government subsidy. And so because because they're so like fair, they're not getting the last 4 years of money going to Politico. And so again, I'm not trying to say Politico is a bad thing, but if you're going to be so far left opinionated, should you get our tax dollars? And so I don't, again, I'm not trying to stir the pot, but like I think people are maybe the speed of what's happening so far is what's got people freaked out. But Donald Trump's an old guy, and they've tried to kill him twice, so I think he's just trying to get stuff done.
Well, speed definitely freaks people out for a lot of reasons. Like, do you know why people are so afraid of cockroaches? It's because they go from like 0 to 60 and like right? Like it is a thing.
I killed one.
So we have to talk about cockroaches. They literally are prolific in the South.
I was living at 22nd and Oasis in Austin, and there was one on my bathroom floor, and I grabbed like a shaving cream can or a Coke can, and I got it, and his head popped off. It got up and ran away at 60 miles an hour with no head.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, this is insane.
and they fly. So there's all that. You can imagine being chased around by a flying cockroach. It's terrible. And
we don't have flying cockroaches in Michigan. Another benefit to be in Michigan.
No hurricanes, no tornadoes, no flying cockroaches.
We have got a tornado once in a while.
But the speed at which I do think scares people.
Yeah.
And I think there's also volume that's happening that's a little scary because it's so many things at one time. It's not one thing. And for most of us, we have a day job. And so given the fact that we have a day job and we have kids or parents that we're caring for, like whatever your life situation is, you weren't just sitting at home in your lazy boy waiting for the administration to do something and you were going to have time to digest it and have a thoughtful, opinion. That's not most of us. And so the speed at which things are coming means we're not able to keep up with everything that's going on. You just hope you can dip your pinky toe into the area that impacts you the most and start to be educated on that. Like that's the approach I'm taking. I can't be educated on everything. My sister can educate me on some of the things that are more important to her and to the world that she lives in. And I can do the same for the world that I live in. And hopefully we can share, but the speed and volume are really creating some uncomfortableness.
It's so funny. The disruptive speed of AI, we're all like cheering. I've been driven around by my Tesla for 6 years, and we're loving AI coming to our business. But the speed of balancing a budget and getting rid of fraud and abuse, we're like, oh my gosh, it's crazy because it's never happened in the government. I mean, not like you said, not since we were broke back in 2008 during the Obama administration. I mean, he deported 3.2 million people. He was balancing the budget because we were broke. We were in a financial crisis. And so thank God we're not in that crisis. We're not in a pandemic, but we certainly have a lot of work to do doing basic stuff like wasteful fraud, abuse, spending, and just balancing a budget. So again, cautiously optimistic. That's the word of the show.
We are at that time, guys. Thanks, KP, for joining from the slopes. Christy, always good to catch up with you. Next Friday, we're gonna have a new rotation. Courtney Thompson is going to join the party. I'm looking forward to having Courtney from the perspective of that she brings from the backside of the business, the servicing side of the business. And Christy, you just hit on some things that are potentially coming down the pipe that we haven't had to worry about in our industry for quite a while. So looking forward to getting Courtney's perspective on kind of how she's looking at the world from a servicing perspective and what they're preparing for. So tune back in next Friday. We had Courtney, the other C, Courtney Thompson, to the mix. Another former colleague. KP, you and I need to find a way to work together so that we can all connect the dots here. But
we are at FinLocker.
Good point. That's good.
Remember when
That's
Tavant took us out and you're like, I'm thinking about leaving Flagstar and I'm going to go work at FinLocker. I'm like, I love that tech, man. Go get it, Tiger.
I do remember. It's right. We are technically working together. You're a shareholder, so thank you for your service. All right, welcome, guys. Thank you all.
Pictures, KP. We want to see the mountains.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you have to go to Instagram.
See you next Friday, y'all.
Bye, guys.